Welcome to the Out and Back, your place for new and exciting stories from in and around the endurance sport world. I'm your host, Miguel Mattox. Endurance sports are changing. That might be obvious, but the traditional model of signing up for a race, training for months, and showing up on a predictable course set at a standard distance is still alive, but a new wave of athletes is looking for something different. A recent multi-year study out of Deloitte and World Triathlon points to a bigger shift across the industry. Participation is moving toward more immersive, experience-driven activities. People want challenge, scenery, unpredictability, social connection, and a sense of story, even at the expense of luxuries like flashy swag, aid stations, and even porta potties. There are plenty of comparisons you can make, but the one that drives my understanding is how ultra-marathon running has grown just in the last 20 years from something exclusively for a tiny fringe of mountain weirdos into a fully commercialized business supported by internationally recognized brands and big sponsorship money. Triathlon and its subset of disciplines sits right in the middle of this trend. There are new formats popping up everywhere: gravel triathlons, point-to-point challenges, swim-run events, off-road multisport, stage-based adventures, and increasingly, athletes are designing their own routes with friends in full DIY fashion. It's pulling the sport in interesting directions and raising new questions about what the future of multisport might look like. In my interview today, I want to get a better understanding of 1, how the landscape of multisport is changing, 2, upsides and downsides of what we call adventure racing, and 3, how athletes can partake in this exciting and maybe uncertain new wave. Our guest today is Derek Owens, a coach at Working Triathlete based in Boulder, Colorado. I'm excited to have Derek on since, yes, he trains athletes for traditional race events, but he also leans into the shift toward adventure. He builds his own challenge-style events with friends and encourages athletes to use fitness to explore the world. And he's also based in the mecca of the multisport world, Boulder, Colorado. His perspective bridges structured training and racing and the growing desire for personal, soul-searching endurance experiences. Derek, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Miguel. Excited to be here. Excited to chat about adventure.
Me too. This is not only just an interesting story, but it's one that I hope to participate in eventually. So I'm really excited to get into it with you. I just kind of want to take a 10,000 foot view to start about just like this shift towards experiential events and the growing adventure state within triathlon. You're here because not only do you participate, but you're also just like seeing firsthand with your athletes how this shift is occurring. So how do you see this this trend playing out, and what athletes that might have done traditional triathlon to begin with are, what are they doing differently today than they were 10 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, for sure. I think if we're thinking about the trend overall, I see lots of athletes, especially at this time of the season, kind of who lean into being a triathlete primarily throughout the traditional triathlon, like North American triathlon season.
Mm-hmm.
They get to this time of the year, they're thinking about how to really set themselves up for success for the following year, but also like get a little bit outside of that like traditional structure. That's like where I started to see it primarily with myself personally, but also with athletes that I coach, is people kind of looking for ways to break up the like what can become the monotony of really consistent structured training for 12 months out of the year. I personally started dabbling in Zwift racing as a means of doing something different than triathlon. This was primarily in 2020 and early 2021, but I've had athletes get into cross country skiing, ski mountaineering racing, just downhill skiing in general. When we're thinking about traditional winter sports, folks who really lean heavily into fat tire mountain bike racing, just some desire for something that is not that traditional triathlon structure during the off season. And that's really where I started to see it happen.
Yeah.
And then as I personally dabbled in those types of like non-triathlon events during the winter. And when I see athletes kind of messing around with non-triathlon stuff during the winter time, it really like piques an interest for like what other kinds of interesting things might I be able to do with fitness during what has like always been triathlon season for me.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's like that's at least the trajectory that I've seen for athletes that I coach that come from this, like, I want to do triathlon. Triathlon is what I do as an endurance sport activity, like kind of like using the off season as an opportunity to mess around with things that they wouldn't otherwise do during the season, and then realizing that that might be something that motivates them during the triathlon season. And then they start to ask questions about how might I fit that into like a build towards a 70.3, for example. How do I fit adventure into like that traditional structure?
Right. And that's a good point. I think the primary reason for all of this, I mean, the timing makes total sense. Around the pandemic, I remember all of us that were training specifically for triathlon, and then there were no events, and we all wanted to stay in shape, but give intention to that fitness. And I think this theme blew up around then because people were getting creative with how they could use their fitness. I'm curious because you're based in Boulder, and obviously there are more multi-sport events in Boulder than anywhere else in the country combined, it seems like. How have you seen event organizers and the actual events, I guess, adhere to this shift towards experience and adventure?
Yeah. When I was thinking about like this conversation today, I started thinking about why we're seeing so many like new formats. And I think that there are a couple of different things happening. One, there is this like shift towards wanting to use fitness in other ways, like from triathletes in general. And that is increasing demand for non-triathlon events. And I also think that there is a lot of this stuff that has been happening for a long time. And there are like larger companies that have started acquiring local races, and like the Lifetime series, for example, or UTMB, like doing the same kind of thing that Ironman has done for a while, where they acquire these local races, and then the amount of money that they have that allows them to like market them really well and make them seem like desirable events, like maybe has caused people to see a lot more of like these other types of events that are happening. So I think that that's just like an interesting like piece that comes with pros and cons that I don't know if we want to really get into today.
Well,
but
it reminds me of two perfect examples in the triathlon world are Kona and Challenge Roth. And I'm thinking about those two specifically because they're legacy events. They've been around for a while, and they've been the pinnacle of the sport for a while. And having been to both of them, participating in Challenge Roth last year, it's very clear to see that they are turning these events into almost like festivals. They want you to come out, and they want you to take part. They want you to participate in all the other smaller events that are around the main event.
Yeah.
And I guess that you're probably seeing that a little bit in like local events in Boulder, I'm sure.
Yeah. And like maybe with local events, but just also like I do think that there's I'm seeing an increasing number of like people treating multi-sport endurance events in general that are in desirable places. Like people are looking for things to do throughout that weekend and or like the entire week. The expo goes on for an extended period of time. There's lots of fun events happening around the expo. Sometimes there's like mini races leading up to the actual race.
Right.
Many races that other family members can take like part in the lead up to the actual event itself. And so, yeah, I really do think that like as we see people traveling longer distances to these really desirable places, they like want to call it a vacation and like bring family along and have it be a fun event for everybody. And so, yeah, I do see like more of this like experiential and like community. Well, especially when we're talking about like really long distance races that take all day, like you can't just show up at the start line and do the race and cross the finish line and then go back home for the most part. Like it warrants a lot longer of a trip.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's like got to be other things for people to be doing, both like surrounding the event and then also like something for folks to do during the event when a person is racing and family members are out there spectating. When it comes to here in Boulder, there's like I see more of like consistent series happening where there's like a whole cyclocross series that happens. There's a triathlon series that happens throughout the summer. There's like a stroke and stride event, which is like a swim run that happens basically every week throughout the entire summer. Season standings for events like that get people to consistently come back. You see the same people participating week over week. And so it's still like a very local community that is participating in events like that. But it feels like an even smaller community when it's the same people showing up at the event week after week or like month after month when it's happening in a series like that.
That is one of the cool things that I've noticed about the multi-sport world is everything is becoming a series, it seems like. And with these smaller niche sports that like we might have not really realized existed a few years ago, but now they're being turned into like a game and a competition in some way. And I think like that's almost the winning strategy behind all of this is like take something that is like an adventure and super fun, something that you would do recreationally in some way with a buddy, but adding like an Ironman budget or, you know, a challenge budget to something to make it real, make it an event and make it like some sort of race or competition, something that puts a goal at the end of this. One thing that I wanted to chat with you about, because it's something that I know you do, is this idea of creating your own races or your own events, which I find really fascinating. It's something that a lot of people attempted to do, you know, during and around 2020. First of all, what have you done? I'm curious to hear like what you've put together for yourself and buddies.
Having been involved in endurance sport and like triathlon specifically for like many years now, I've found that at this point, I'm getting the most joy from expressing my fitness in like ways that allow me to explore the beautiful place that I live or other beautiful places that I travel to. And so built into like an otherwise traditional triathlon schedule over the course of the last couple of years, I've like done the entire White Rim Trail in Canyonlands National Park. It's like a little over 100 miles. Me and a couple of buddies did it in one day. A lot of people do it as a backpacking event, do it like in a couple of days. We did it all in one day. There are plenty of other people that do it in one day, but it's like kind of a 12-hour
it's a long
undertaking. Yeah. And it's like fully self-supported. There's no water or like anywhere that you can stop along the course. So we like carry up like 8 liters of water each and like a ton of food and fuel, like everything that we needed in case we had any kind of like catastrophic mechanical failures. Because yeah, once you're on the White Rim, there's like not really access to anything else. So yeah, did the White Rim in a day. Similarly, but like on foot, did a big backpacking loop, like all in one day. It's called the 4-Pass Loop in like Maroon Bells Wilderness in like Aspen, Colorado. It's like 26 miles. And I usually don't have like time goals going into these things. I just like feel really excited by like the fact that I feel fit enough to go out and run 26 miles with like 1,000 feet of elevation gain, like with my friends, and then camp for the rest of the weekend with my family. So yeah, those are two things. And then I started coaching an athlete that is like particularly motivated and interested in FKT, like fastest known time routes, like specifically multisport fastest known time routes, either establishing his own or like going for segments that have been created. And so the one that I did this year that was particularly like challenging but also like fun and interesting was I rode my bike from the doorstep at my house to the trailhead for a 14,000 foot mountain here in Colorado called Long's Peak, 35 miles uphill. Started at 3 a.m. And then went up and down the mountain on foot and then rode my bike back home. it ended up being like, I don't know, 14, 15 hours, just like from start to finish. And there were plenty of people on the mountain that day, but I did it all by myself. It's just such a like an interesting and exciting way to like explore the outdoors.
Yeah. I think like these events sound utterly amazing. And I think it's one of the beautiful things that we get as endurance athletes is we get to complete event and we get to know how that feels. And that feeling is uniquely yours, right? Like everybody could be doing the same Ironman, for example, but at the end of the day, you're chatting with your buddies that did the same thing, and you all have these completely different experiences. And I think like going a step beyond that and creating your unique experience makes that even more of like an amazing feeling. And it's like, it really gets at the why behind why we do these events is like we create these unique experiences that only we can feel. One of the things that I notice about you're an extremely experienced athlete. You're talking about the white rim, and it's completely self-supported. You have to bring all the water, all the fuel. I want to talk about the pros and cons of these things because they're amazing. But also at the same time, there are a lot of inexperienced athletes that could be doing something that's way over their head. For sure. How are you noticing that? And what are some of the pros and cons to doing these events?
Yeah. I'm thinking about a couple of athletes that I coach right now that have done the Ironman distance and are getting really excited about doing like an ultra marathon, like a trail ultra marathon, jumping straight up to the 100K distance. And that I think is just like, once you do an Ironman, there are some people that get in their brain that like they can essentially do anything. And I don't think that they're incapable of doing the 100K distance, but I do think that they're underestimating like what it's really going to feel like when you compare it to an Ironman. And so, yeah, I think that doing a formal event is very different from doing something that you design on your own.
Totally.
And like, but there are formal events that still introduce a lot of safety risk, like when it comes to just like being out in really remote terrain, like weather changes, all of that kind of stuff. And so when people start getting into particularly challenging events, it does introduce like a bit of like risk that if you're not considering could become dangerous. Personally, when we talk about that long speed thing, personally, and like as a coach, worked with lots of people on nutrition planning for like long duration events. And a factor that I really hadn't considered at quite the level that I needed to was the fact that I was going to need to be fueling it at altitude. And and it like resulted in me kind of getting mild altitude sickness once I got up to 13,000 feet. Now reflecting on it, like I probably shouldn't have kept going all the way to the top. It was like I was introducing additional risk. I was a little like naive going into like that like long duration event, thinking that like, well, I know the formula for fueling for 12 to 15 hours. Like I'm pretty sure that I can just execute that. And while I was very methodical with the logistics of a lot of things, I think that I didn't quite mitigate the risk in all the ways that I could have. And being out like away from cell phone signal, like if you don't have some way of like contacting like a person or emergency services if you need it, like is like really important to consider. Navigational skills, like I mean it depends on the type of event that you're doing, but there's absolutely like a different kind of risk than like showing up to the start line of an Ironman where there's like a medical tent like at every few aid stations that you can get to, and somebody can like pick you up if they need to and take you to the medical tent. It's just a little bit more complex.
Yeah, and the fact that you are creating what looks to be an amazing adventure for yourself, and you're like, why isn't there an organized event that does this?
Yeah.
Well, there's probably reasons for that, right? Like whether that's permitting issues, traffic safety, getting up to elevation where you run the risk of getting altitude sickness. There are a lot of risks that go into these adventures, or what we're calling adventures, that formal event organizers might not be willing to explore. And you have to keep that in mind. I want to touch on community because you mentioned that earlier. Do you think this trend unintentionally, of course, could run the risk of like splitting the community with some people gravitating towards DIY adventures or these more grand adventures and others sticking to more traditional races.
I don't think so. Because I do think that having been exposed to tons of different types of people through like triathlon communities I've been a part of and like athletes I've coached, there are plenty of people who like still thrive within the triathlon only community. I mean, like, and will continue to contribute to that in like a very similar way. And I think that there are some folks that may just be interested in creating community like in slightly different ways. Maybe that does like segment the community slightly, but overall it's like a contribution or just like an opportunity to like find people with even more similar like interests and motivation, because like there are folks that are a part of the triathlon community that are motivated in so many different ways. You know, the folks that are like really motivated by just like accomplishing this challenge one time and then checking it off their list. There are people who are motivated by being at their physiological potential or as close to it as they can get. People who are motivated by like actually competing at like a high level and getting on a podium or qualifying for a world championship race. And then there are plenty of people who sit on an indoor trainer or run on a treadmill for the entirety of their training. And then there are folks that aren't motivated by that type of training and like would prefer to be like around other like-minded folks and like go for group runs, go for group rides, do master swimming type stuff. So yeah, I think that it's just like it's really like different interests and it's providing opportunity for those like slightly different, like call them learning styles of people.
Yeah, learning and motivation styles. And I think like I ask this because one of the issues that I've noticed in the multi-sport world is potentially some athletes looking down at other types of athletes, whether that's because they're completely beginners at the sport or they, I remember this was a few years ago before I even touched a bike, mountain bikers like looking down on roadies, like that kind of trend. But so given safety, given potentially splitting communities, which I don't think will be a factor or has been a factor, how should brands or group ride organizers, group run organizers, governing bodies, how do you think they should all be supporting this movement how should they support the movement without taking away the creativity that makes it appealing in the first place?
Yeah. When I think specifically about USA Triathlon as a governing body, I know that there have been conversations for years now about like triathlon really being inclusive of all like multi-sport that includes swim, bike, or run. And yeah, I think that that's the correct move to make because there are like so many different like styles of multi-sport and like combinations of multi-sport. Like, I mean, even like when we're talking about off-road triathlon or like an event like in Bend, Oregon, they have like pole, pedal, paddle where you can like ski, bike, and then like paddle in water, like stand up paddle, like, just like kind of different style events like that. But when it comes to like brands or like group organizers, I think that it's just important that we acknowledge that not everybody is really excited by finding the fastest Ironman course that exists. There are plenty of athletes that are like, I want to do Ironman California because it's a down current swim. The bike is pretty flat. The run is pretty flat. I want a PR at the Ironman distance. But there are also lots of people who are going to be more motivated by like something non-traditional. I mean, thinking about things like Norseman, people are really intrigued by an event like Norseman because it is like branded as more challenging, but it's really just like a different type of course than like where it feels like Ironman distance events are really going. for the most part. They're just like looking to optimize for speed, the best weather possible. But I think it's really interesting to consider what types of events could be like branded as challenging for other reasons and like worth exploring for other reasons because of where they are, because of the type of terrain that they cross, because the weather is colder, or I don't know, we already do triathlon in a lot of really hot places.
We don't need more of that.
We don't need any more hot places, but yeah, just like I think that like figuring out how to cater events to not just feel like they're the most efficient way of like crossing 112 miles or whatever the distance really is. The more that we lean on efficiency like that, the more we're like kind of losing soul, you know, like when bigger brands are coming and picking up these races and they make them really predictable, the more that we're just like picking up a race and replicating exactly that same race in another place, the more we're kind of like losing the soul of what really made that event special. And I think that that's like really what I'd love to see race organizers like continue to do, is to like make sure that races feel unique and exciting in ways that like is beyond just like the course, you know, like what makes that event different? What makes Ironman Arizona different from Ironman California? And like, I mean, if you ask me, there's not a whole lot besides the course right now.
I hear that. I think, you know, it's bringing up a lot of thoughts about like what different race organizations are doing differently and continuing to innovate. What comes to mind is the Challenge brand of triathlon that's mainly based in Europe, and they have a ton of races in Europe, only a couple in North America, but each race is unique to that town that they're hosting it in and uses the terrain in the way that that terrain is meant to be used. You know, they take popular cycling routes, whether it's hilly or different type of terrain, and use that in the race. So looking ahead, what do you think that landscape is going to look like 5 to 10 years down the road? Do you think we're going to see more traditional brands adopt this, or do you think we're going to see, you know, maybe smaller brands, smaller race organizations kind of replace them in some way because of this demand?
Yeah, I think that, well, there are a couple of things that I see happening and I imagine will continue happening. One is larger brands are going to continue to like lean into like acquiring or establishing races that they can execute at a really high level. You know, like going to an Ironman race, it like everything is really well planned. There's porta potties everywhere.
Yeah,
like there's like aid stations everywhere that have everything that you need, like all that kind of stuff. Same with like the Lifetime Series gravel events. Like we're going to continue to see these like bigger, well-marketed events popping up and see more and more people registering for them. Like the demand for those gravel races, the Lifetime Series, is ridiculous right now. Like we're seeing like lotteries where very few people are actually admitted to races like Unbound or the Leadville 100, things like that. And within those communities, I see like a bit of pushback, just like moving back towards like grassroots type events for a little bit of that like soul piece that I'm talking about, where like people making sure to like support their local race organizer that's been doing the same like gravel event like nearby or like in a favorite place of theirs, and they continue to like put that race on. It hasn't yet become like this bigger thing, and like if we see a split in the community, it's going to be a little bit of that. It's like people that are new to the sport, it's easier to find the bigger race organizers. They'll gravitate towards those like bigger events, and there will continue to be people that like kind of push back on that and try and be a part of like smaller grassroots organizations that are putting on races.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting to see, like this perpetual push and pull where you know, people like us are like, like we want more adventure races, and bigger race organizations are going to be like, here's your bigger adventure race. And we're going to be like, nah, it's too big. We want the smaller stuff, you know, like we want the more grassroots stuff. I think finishing up, I just want to ask for folks that are interested in getting involved in more like non-traditional races and events, what kind of tips do you have for them, whether it's creating something on their own or looking into things that they might not know already exist?
I'm talking more and more with athletes that I coach about like finding things that just like bring them an immense amount of joy that's like slightly outside of like what otherwise would be something on the Training Peaks calendar. If you're interested in dabbling in something slightly different, like, yeah, don't go super ultra endurance like right at the beginning, but like find a local trail race that you can jump into and like talk with a coach that you're working with about fitting that in, or like just consider the ways in which triathlon as something that you're training for supports getting prepared for a single discipline event. Running a marathon or running an ultra, you don't have to do quite as much like run volume if you're cycling a ton. And so just like figuring out ways to like continue doing like all three sports or two of the three sports, if like that's really like where you're leaning in, and yeah, like leverage the cycling fitness or the fitness that you can gain through cycling for like running events that you might be signed up for. But yeah, I would say like it's probably safer and like more accessible to find a race that you can sign up for, an actual formal event. But I also encourage you to like talk with a friend of yours or a group of friends and see if there's anything like that feels interesting. I was just texting a buddy of mine today about like maybe we both ride from our respective homes in different areas of the Denver suburbs and like meet at a trailhead and then go to the top and then like ride our bikes to a brewery afterwards. Like that, like that's the kind of thing that like it's different than like I'm going to ride 100 miles with my friends that like other people I know have like done in the past. But think about like more creative and like exciting ways that you can like just explore the outdoors around where you live and figure out ways to like kind of fit that into to your calendar for next season.
And I think one last tip that I want to add is finding a mentor if you're doing anything like this, whether it's a coach or someone who has done it before, because it's not fun if it's not safe. So
Sure.
Make sure you're doing it right and staying healthy doing it. Well, cool. Derek, thanks so much for guiding us through the world of adventure sport and multisport. And I want to do one. I want to go back and create something for myself. And yeah, so thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was my chat today with Derek Owens, coach at Working Triathlete. We wanted to go down a lot of different rabbit holes about what this trend actually means and all the things it has to offer our sport. So, I'm sure there will be more conversations like this about this trend. I'm genuinely excited to explore more of it, and I hope you are too. But for now, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.